Welcome to Study Loop.
This question is investigating population structure, and we're going to walk through this question by looking at a survivorship curve first. So this is basically the number of individuals that remain in a population as a function of their age. So the information that they give us is that initially there's a very high number of individuals at a young age, but uh, after a certain time point, so I'm going to just draw a dashed line here. We'll call this the age where this population reaches sexual maturity, SM. Uh, we see, we've noticed that there's a much lower level of individuals at that later age until they finally reach their maximum age. So looking at these data points that we can plot along the survivorship curve, we can sort of infer that there's a steep decline in the number of individuals before they reach sexual maturity. So we're basically seeing this huge drop in the number of individuals at a young age prior to reaching sexual maturity. So um, from these data points, we can kind of hypothesize that there is a very high mortality rate during the developmental period before sexual maturity. Um, and we could do this by using what is called a life table. Uh, so a life table basically breaks members of population down into a group. So it would say, okay, let's count all the individuals at this very young age, then count all the individuals at this age, count all the individuals this age, this age, this age, and determine the mortality rate. So basically, the percentage of individuals that are dying within each of these age groups. And if our hypothesis is correct, then what the life table would show us is a very high mortality rate. So if we look at uh, this curve here, just between these two time points, we see that mortality rate could be as high as, you know, maybe 50% in this very young group, and maybe another 50 or 70% of the remaining animals uh, will not survive to sexual maturity here. But then once they reach sexual maturity, it stabilizes. So we can see the drop from here to here is actually very low. So maybe 5% of individuals um, will not survive in this age group, and maybe another 5% here. So a life table would be the appropriate way to look at this data and test your hypothesis that there is a high mortality rate in these young ages prior to sexual maturity, based on the survivorship curve that I drew. So looking through our options, it looks like the correct answer is going to be C. A researcher would hypothesize that the mortality rate is very high before sexual maturity is reached, and would test this by looking at it directly, um, by collecting data and creating a life table to determine the mortality rate at each of these different ages. So the correct answer to this question is again C.